In 1989, in the quiet town of Red River, Tennessee, a Catholic priest became the center of one of the strangest and most terrifying events in local history. Officially, the church called it a pastoral intervention, but the locals, they still call it what it was. The night Father Michael met something that was not unexplained. Father Michael Harrington was not a dramatic man. He wasn't one of those priests you see in the movies, obsessed with demons and brandishing crucifixes. He was soft-spoken, highly educated, and incredibly practical, trained in counseling, not in demonology. For 15 years, his duties in Red River never went beyond the usual confession, marriage, and funeral services. But in the fall of 1989, something new and something old found its way into town. It all began with a family named the Carsons. The Carsons lived on a simple half-acre property, surrounded by tall pine trees. They were a completely normal family, until their daughter, Emily, turned 11. That's when the strange occurrences began. Neighbors started hearing what sounded like chanting coming from the house in the dead of night. The lights inside would flicker violently, almost like a strobe effect. Most disturbingly, Emily began speaking in languages that no one in the town recognized. It wasn't Latin, it wasn't Spanish, and it certainly wasn't Cherokee, which the local tribe later confirmed. At first, her family thought it must be something psychological, some kind of breakdown. But then, Emily started predicting future events with chilling accuracy, specifically things involving their neighbors, including 2 deaths from sudden illness. After doctors ran every test they could and found absolutely nothing wrong, the terrified Carsons turned to the only person left they felt they could trust, Father Michael. When Father Michael first visited the Carson house, he was expecting to deal with emotional trauma, perhaps a family in crisis. He brought his Bible, a small vial of holy water, and little else. He wasn't prepared for what he found. As he stepped through the front door, 11-year-old Emily greeted him with a sentence that no child should ever know. She looked at him and said, "We've met before, Father, but you were younger." And I wasn't inside a girl. Father Michael froze. He was certain he had never laid eyes on this child before in his life. Then, Emily began reciting intimate details from his past, secrets he had never shared with anyone, including the exact day he nearly abandoned his training at the seminary. As she spoke, the air in the room grew heavy and cold. His breath became visible in the air. The thermostat, which read 74 degrees when he entered, plummeted to 52 degrees in less than a minute. Shaken, Father Michael meticulously documented everything he saw and heard. Now you have to understand, the church hates the word exorcism. They much prefer sanitized, bureaucratic terms like spiritual assistance, deliverance rite, or special permission. But after reviewing Father Michael's detailed notes, his audio tapes, and his personal diaries, the Archdiocese authorized a Level 2 intervention. This was not for show. There would be no audience, no film crew. It was to be just Michael and one assisting priest, a man named Father O'Donnell, who was known for being both experienced and deeply skeptical. The rite took place at 2:17 a.m. inside the Carsons' living room. As Father Michael began the Latin prayers, Emily's body didn't thrash or shake like in the movies. It went completely rigid, as if she were carved from stone. She then began whispering scripture, but backwards. She wasn't mocking the words. She was reciting them perfectly, in reverse. Her pupils dilated until her eyes were just 2 black orbs. A foul, overpowering smell filled the room, a mix of sulfur and whetstone, a scent often reported in pre-exorcism cases. Father O'Donnell would later testify that in that moment, Emily turned her head, smiled faintly, and said in a voice not her own, "He is not afraid of you, Michael, but he knows your doubt." This was the one thing no one else knew, the secret doubt that Michael had wrestled with for years. At the absolute peak of the ritual, the mirrors in the living room shattered. All of them, all at once, but they didn't break into shards. They exploded into fine dust. In that same instant, Emily collapsed, her heartbeat shallow, her breathing erratic. Undeterred, Father Michael pressed on, his voice now commanding, invoking the name of Christ with dominion to leave. At precisely 3:01 a.m., Emily gasped violently for air, sat bolt upright, and screamed one final, terrifying sentence. "He does not live here." And then there was silence. Not a peaceful silence, but a dead, empty void. Emily recovered slowly. Medical tests showed no neurological damage, and she had no memory of the events, only a vague feeling of being cold and watched. The church officially declared the case closed. Within a year, the Carsons moved to Minnesota, and no further disturbances were ever reported from them. But the story doesn't end there. Father Michael kept a detailed private journal. In one of his final entries, he wrote, "The entity did not fear Scripture. It feared recognition." 8 months later, during evening mass, Father Michael suffered a massive stroke. Before he collapsed at the altar, he uttered one sentence that witnesses in the church still debate to this day. He said, "He followed me." The church immediately sealed Michael's journal. The Carson case was archived, and all official mention of the event was removed from the parish records. But the locals in Red River, they still remember, and they still warn newcomers. The church doesn't hide ghosts or demons. It hides proof. If you think this story is just an exaggeration, a local legend, go look at the funerary plaque under Father Michael's name in Red River. You won't find any dates. Just 2 words. He returned. Thanks for watching. If you want to hear more stories that they don't want you to know, be sure to subscribe.